Someone needs to make a video called The Importance of Swimming. Okay, here it goes. Swimming is an excellent form of exercise and provides benefits to the body in a variety of ways. Not only will it train your cardiovascular system, it will also help build endurance and muscle strength.
What the hell just happened?
Oh, wait. That's not the right form of swimming we're talking about here. If you're a music fan or a music reviewer, you may have heard of a YouTuber by the name of Tabby before. His lighthearted content and fun personality have made him basically sort of a titan in the music reaction space, having garnered over 100,000 subscribers. He's been doing this ever since 2016 and has been upping his content and production style with each and every video. Even still going on nowadays with infrequent but hilarious reactions to stuff like Call Me If You Get Lost or Melt My Eyes to Your Future, for example. But in 2018, he released a video that's a lot more serious, but down to earth and human in tone. The title of the video in question is The Importance of Swimming. Now, what makes the importance of swimming, well, important? Well, for starters, this video obviously revolves around Mac Miller's Swimming, released exactly 3 months and 1 day after the release of Swimming on November 4th, 2018. The video is not just strictly a review of the album though, as it dives into multiple other topics surrounding Mac Miller, including his career up until this point, the core emotions that surround the album, and addressing problems with people using or thinking about Mac Miller in toxic or narcissistic ways. Whether that be thinking drug use or just dark times in general make a better artist, or harassing Ariana Grande, Mac's girlfriend, because one thing she was at fault. The video also has themes of mental health and getting over your fears and anxieties, mainly by comparing them to jumping into a vast ocean. 2.
Start swimming.
To not argue with yourself about what could happen and just start swimming, pick a direction and go, because then you're finally moving forward. And these themes play very well into the album in question, Swimming. From its name to comparing getting over your fears to jumping in a body of water, which funny enough, what you're doing goes back to the album's name. It's all just like a giant circle, isn't it? Anyway, we're going to discuss the reasons why this video is important and who it's important for. Let's start with Tabby. The video begins with a clip of Tabby talking about swimming in one of his usual reaction style videos. The intimacy of Tabby talking uncut in a car gives off a more down-to-earth tone and lets you know this video won't be the usual.
Whoa. This is the woman! Oh my god! I love this shit, dude. Oh my god.
He goes on to say that the album really relaxed him and made him feel
very human right now,
which is fitting because later on he speaks about the mental health issues he's dealing with. Basically saying,
I am human.
This identification of your own mental health and anxieties correlates very well with the first track of Swimming, Come Back to Earth.
My regrets look just like Texas shooting sand.
The song establishes Mac's conflict between his newfound sense of optimism and his perennial challenges with depression, isolation, and addiction, using the realization of I just need a way out of my head to understand that he needs to come back to Earth. And, in turn, this helped Tabby do it too. Now, if you've already seen this video, it's no secret that swimming really helps Tabby's mental health. He states that this video has taken him a very long time to make, both for editing and personal reasons. He explains exactly why as well, as he gets stuck with old ideas before impulsively coming up with new ones, and not really allowing himself to be patient with his ambitions before putting old ideas on pause that he hasn't even fully put into effect yet.
I freeze up, I give in to my anxieties. I let them win.
It's a cycle for him. But there's one more thing I didn't mention about Come Back to Earth until now, and it's perhaps the most important one, the swimming metaphor. This metaphor of self-care, self-acceptance, and personal liberation provides the backbone for not only the album, but the video as well. As Tabby says, time is the ultimate healer of your struggles, but he still has the issue of striking while the iron is hot, as you can tell by his upload schedule and by what he says here. Beginning out by finally moving forward and not drowning in your own thoughts and insecurities derived from the swimming metaphor is exactly what helped Tabby realize. You won't go nowhere unless you move forward, or swim, or put out any idea you can without the possibility of fear or self-doubt. And to finally be in that state of mind of constant creativity with no consequences after that consistent anxiety is like reaching self-care.
Self-care, we gonna be
So now that we know why and how the video was good for Tabby himself, what actually happens in the video? Well, despite the core points of the video I mentioned earlier, none of which are in chronological order, he talks about all sorts of topics regarding Mac Miller and swimming, including a sort of track-by-track breakdown of the album, including
Perfecto!
to speak about once again the core emotions of the album. Each topic ties into one another and flows into the next so smoothly and cohesively. He uses a very clever selfish and selfless juxtaposition, using it to not only describe Mac, but Tabby himself. Mac with the two ways of him depicting self-love with the release of Good AM and Swimming. Good AM was made selflessly, so we knew he was going to be okay. Swimming was made selfishly, for Mac himself,
so he'd know he was okay.
but also with Tabby as well, to speak true honesty about his own personal flaws regarding mental health and his social life, whether with friends or alone.
I'm someone who drops anything when people I care about are going through some shit, but when I get the same energy in return, I push it away or I straight up don't even seek it out.
You can see the two sides of the same coin here. Both are the healthy, balanced version of each side, and each help one another for the foundation of Mac and Tabby's emotions, anxiety, and honesty. Both act as the main tools for Mac and Tabby's journey to self-forgiveness and self-love. And that's another thing. Honesty and true human emotions. Tabby has never sounded this honest or down to earth in a video before. I mean, hey, it is,
The beauty of being flawed.
after all. I mean, obviously he has shown true emotions in videos before, but, you know. But here, Tabby lets a lot of his anxieties out. He's very honest with everything he has to say about himself in this video, and it shows in the editing. No fancy flash effects or vignettes, no dramatic music, none of that. Just an honest person on top of an honest and reserved beat. And simple editing, even for 2018 standards. It's very calm and gives you a chance to breathe with each and every edit, which was refreshing for a time when constant motion, sensory overload, and a dire attempt to keep your attention on the screen at all times were everywhere back in 2018. Even back for stuff that wasn't made for kids or kids content. And even now, this video is still refreshing even in the current wave of super long video essays and documentaries you see coming out left and right nowadays. It really is the honesty, calmness, and rawness of the video that still make it stand out from the rest and make it worth coming back to. And the reserved beat mixed with the smooth transitions into each topic and idea gives it endless replay value and inspiration for others trying to do the same thing. Anyway, it is here that we move into the sort of track-by-track breakdown I mentioned earlier, but not before tying all these ideas up into the swimming metaphor once again, but this time putting it into the context of Mac, not Tabby. He chose to move forward.
He chose to swim.
You see the two sides now? You see the two sides of the same coin? It's like a mirror of both Mac and Tabby's reflections. Objects in the mirror. The breakdown consists of not really describing every track in detail, rather described from Mac's lowest to his highest point on the album, describing the darkest to the lightest state of his mental health. The two key tracks that summarize the darkest to the lightest state of his mental health, from track 4
Perfecto!
to track 12, 2009. He also briefly mentions wings, ladders, and small worlds, describing Mac's mental evolution and progression across these tracks. Conversation part 1 is also mentioned, but rather for a separate point that I'll speak on later. He also delves into the lyrics more than just the overall compendium of the song. But Swimming really is beautiful when you look at it through the sense of Mac discovering something new about himself with each track. Each track is Mac finding more and more about himself. It's not as scattered or backward as you might think. The album is really in chronological order of the improvement of his mental state, even though it may not feel like it on first listen, especially when Tabby is saying the starting point of this is on Perfecto. You can tell from the slight progression of the track names. Come Back to Earth is the starting point, the realization. Mac is wounded by his own thoughts and insecurities once again, but he's found a new sense of optimism, that being to start swimming. Hurt feelings is the start of him moving forward, but he doesn't know where to go quite yet. The fear of scale gets to him and he starts to contradict himself. He doesn't want to delve into him not changing or overthinking for too long so that he doesn't hurt his own feelings. What's the use is exactly what the name suggests. Mac overthinks about not going anywhere so hard that he starts to find positivity in not moving forward, even though that's the last thing he should be doing. But he doesn't know that yet. The weirdly positive and funky beat provides a juxtaposition of Mac's mind, as Mac is telling himself that he doesn't need to swim. Also, note that this is the first time Mac explicitly references drugs on the album. Perfecto is one of the darkest points of the album. He has completely stopped moving and the lyrics have devolved, once again, into the subject of drugs. Especially at the outro, where he almost seems completely brainwashed into thinking drugs are the healthiest thing for him when even he knows that's the worst thing he can do. He has overthought and has now gone back inside. But he knows that now, unlike What's the Use. The cinematic instrumental outro gives the thought of, will he ever make it out? So the first 4 tracks of the album are positively negative, as it's him finding his self-love. But things start to lift up again on self-care. Mac reflects on all the past things he's overcome, which motivates him to start swimming again. But he still acts sort of standoffish and sarcastic about it. However, that will all change on the next track, Wings. It almost acts as a therapy session, as Mac is completely reflecting on everything he said in self-care, but has let his reservations with them go. He's finally admitting everything, realized his wings, and realized again that the only way to get better is to start swimming again. Many think this track is really depressing, but I would say it's the opposite. Yes, Mac is reflecting, but there's an element of motivation behind it, as if Mac knows now that he can make it out. So from here, the album gets a lot more positive. Ladders is the first full, affirming, positive track on the record. He's making his way up again. It beams confidence with the jazzy instrumental sections all throughout the track. He knows that he could fall at any moment, but that's alright with him. He's not scared anymore. All he must do is find a way up again. He also finds a lover, which he sings about in the post-chorus, and speaks about more in detail on the next track, Small Worlds.
Yeah.
I won't explicitly say if it's Ariana though, because I don't know, especially since this was released after the breakup. Tabby also speaks about that.
It is easy to credit these newer observations to Ariana Grande, but to me that is pretty ignorant and discredits any artistic integrity Mac possesses.
Anyway, Mac is still acting sarcastic like he did on Self-Care, and he still has his real life issues, but doesn't feel scared by them anymore. He seems fully confident in it, no worries. The instrumental also speaks no worries. Mac affirms that it's gonna be alright. Conversation Part 1 has Mac at full confidence levels again, dropping braggadocious bars as he would on any other of his albums, saying you can't fully claim riches if you haven't made them yourself, because otherwise it's just a conversation with the people giving you the money, no real life experience. He also states that he's on another plane of existence. This can also be put into a depressing context, as if he's saying he's already in the afterlife. The lover comes back again on Dunno. This is probably the farthest this album gets from the swimming narrative, as this song is all about this certain lover, but it's still a very concise and cathartic song. This can also be stated another way from its title, Dunno. Mac may feel like he's overthinking about finally making it out again. And that brings him back to his overarching conflict one final time.
Okay, well, I'ma be here for a while longer than I did expect to.
Mac goes full on druggy in this song. It really is like Mac having a full 180 with everything he's done and get better from his addiction. Jet fuel is obviously a metaphor for getting high, and Mac states he can never run out of it. The outro would be heartbreaking without its title, Now's Only Now. Mac realizes exactly that he's high, and that he's been in his drug problem at least 1 million times by now, but there's always room to change, realizing he can get back down again. This song would be absolutely heartbreaking if it was the closer, as it would read as Mac would go back inside after everything he's tried to do to help himself. At that point, there would be no escape anymore. Thankfully, that's not where the album ends, as we get 2009, a pensive, once again reflective, song about his roots and his years before fame. Mac would finally ground himself with these realizations and ideas, and would cement himself into the idea that everything is going to be alright.
She don't cry no more. She tell me that I get her high 'cause an angel's supposed to fly. I ain't asking why no more.
Now, what was the point of that? Well, it really is amazing that the emotions and the meaning of those emotions displayed in the album are so flexible with everybody. Everybody comes up with their own unique conclusions. My breakdown could be much different from yours or Tabby's. And that's the beauty of swimming. It's like a pool or an ocean. Wherever part or corner you dip in, no two ways will be the same for everybody. Each wave or emotion, each instrumental or lyric is so interchangeable for any one of us that decides to listen or swim. But there is one constant. As long as we keep swimming, no matter how far away, we will reach the shore. All you must do is jump, as Mac did. And speaking of wave, Tabby once again rounds these topics back up into the swimming metaphor, using 2009's finalization into self-love to do it. Once again, you won't know anything if you don't just close your eyes and
1, 2, 3.
Jump.
Mac did.
You should now be able to understand each leg of the video now. Each point is introduced to the swimming metaphor, and it's at this point that he has finalized this metaphor. But there is one other constant anchor of the album that Mac is very self-aware of all over: death. He mentions it in 2009 with,
Yeah, I know what's behind that door.
funny enough, right after finalizing his self-love in the chorus. And death is a word that can obviously be attributed to So It Goes, which I didn't speak of for a reason. Now, let's backtrack a bit. You remember conversation part 1 I was talking to you about? Well, Tabby states that song is a sarcastic third-person perspective of Mac's life and status, as if he joined us from the outside of a glass box. He states that Mac stepping into our shoes as commentators of his life. Now, quick little bit of context. The glass box comes up from a point earlier in the video where he mentions Mac's career. At the start, the box is fogged up, and each project is him wiping the dew away just a little more until we got a clearer view of his livelihood. But there's a double-edged sword there. The clearer the box gets, the easier it is for people to have certain opinions on his music and him as a whole, and such people can enjoy watching it all for sport. He also brings up those themes and so it goes.
Well, everybody gather round. I'm still standing, sit down.
And with people that comfortable with it, they can, unfortunately, and very selfishly, say stuff like Mac's music was better when he was in his drug days, which Mac also points out.
It's narcissism more like narcotics, so it goes.
Oh!
And I didn't mention so it goes for this reason. It's used as a gateway into the next and final topic of the video. Tabby's problems with people who think about Mac in toxic or narcissistic ways. These two strings of lyrics from these two songs can honestly sum up the entirety of his upcoming points. The main argument is that darker times produce better art, and I've already addressed it, so I'll let Tabby address it this time.
That's a really toxic way of looking at someone's journey, both mentally and artistically, and you should really step back and evaluate how you would feel if your friends wished you were sad or high all the time because the regular you sucks.
Word. It's sad that this selfish demand has driven so many human beings who decide to pursue art into harmful circumstances. And this obsession has given way to another thing Tabby describes. A world where destructive clout chasing and not caring about your actions or the actions of others is the mainstream. And even though this video was made in 2018, it wouldn't be true to say this obsession with drugs and clout isn't still going on right now. Drugs were obviously a big problem with Mac Miller during his whole career, specifically from Macadelic to Faces until Good AM, where he recognized his self-love, and eventually got over the people with this selfish want from him. Drugs were still in his life, but he had recognized his self-worth. He recognized that everything was gonna be fine.
Good, solid.
And tracks like So It Goes and Conversation Part 1 off this album describe the awareness he has of this selfish want other people have with him. He even goes a step further, stating how he's above that now. This point became clear to me thanks to the healthy dose of sarcasm he uses in these tracks. I've spoken on these lines already, so you get the point. Now, I know I've been pretty objective throughout this whole thing, but I personally like to shed light on another point that isn't in this video. One that's directed at other video essays, especially music analysis. Analyzing art, especially music, has become one of the hottest things to do right now. I mean, look at me, I'm doing it now. But a lot of these videos don't pay respect to the artist. They glaze over their career, but put heavy emphasis on their past or personal life, and draw conclusions from the music about their personal life that don't exist to fit their narrative of a certain artist, making them feel like some character or engagement tool to make their video feel more eye-catching and engaging. That's selfish of you to try and do that, because it makes said artist's words feel pointless when you just box them up to fit your narrative. Just like the glass box that Mac was in all through his career, and you give it to the public to watch the artist for sport. And I don't mean to generalize, but this can be found in more recent or modern music analysis, since it seems like everybody wants to make these videos to cash in on buzz of a new or existing popular artist. These points were made conscious to me through the JPEG Mafia No Jumper interview.
Yeah, and you got a lot of eyeballs on you that are very discerning as well. Like, I was watching a video of some white kid with glasses just talking about your career.
I hate those videos, dude.
Most rappers I interview just don't have this type of analysis going into their art. They're just talking about, like, I feel like with this project, he is fully formed. Like, this is it. I don't know how he's going to improve upon this.
It's really not. It's people, the type of music I make, it's just kind of weirder and more like left field, so it's just naturally going to attract that kind of person.
This point was especially made clear to me when Tabby references the act of watching a man's pain and suffering for entertainment in the book of Pagliacci, a tale of a clown love for his personal tragedies because they think it's all a performance, when in reality, it's just that, his reality. And speaking of JPEG, he is a good parallel of this. He probably has the most discerning set of eyes on the internet right now, as people are constantly analyzing his music on all corners of the internet. But it's even worse nowadays, because everyone already knows it's his reality. They just don't care. They only care about his personal life because of his music, which I'd say is the worst part. You don't know these people personally. You don't know their backstory, especially when you're only talking about it because you like their music. And then you make it seem like this is their certain backstory. And please stop deeming these artists like this is their certain backstory, and then give it to the public to spew that same rhetoric, when no one should even be talking about it in the first place. It's just extremely intrusive, and also extremely lazy and bad research. It hits an unhealthy balance of not caring enough to give a spare thought to properly research, while also caring just enough so that you can get the money from talking about it. Now, this doesn't go out to every video essay or music analysis out there. There are videos that tread this fine line very well. And obviously, I think it's fine for people to draw their own conclusions about art. I think it's good for opening your mind and boosting your status creatively. But please recognize that an artist's backstory should never be used for your own personal gain, even though it's part of that certain artist's life, especially when, like I said, you're only in it because of the music. And it's not just Peggy or other musicians, it's Mac himself who has this problem as well. A prime example is when people draw conclusions from any love song he makes to Ariana, as I mentioned earlier. Also, when people consider Swimming as a quote-unquote breakup record as stated on Genius. Note that this is on Genius when Peggy faces hate for Genius in that same interview.
Oh my god, I hate that site. They've my lyrics up so much. And you know all these like little critics and stuff, this is where they get all their information from. They don't actually look into anything, so they just rap Genius real quick. So if someone's there, it's like it becomes fact, and I'm just like, ugh.
The whole statement completely summarizes the points we've been discussing, especially the, but I understand it, I'm not mad at them for it. It's kind of like the story writes itself. How can you expect people to not? I mean, I would love for people to just take the music as just the music, try and get rid of the outside context, which is impossible to do, but just try. The point is, you should never make yourself all about the focal point when talking about an artist's career. And I don't mean literally, I mean in intent. Please stop treating artists as content robots for your own personal gain. Treat them as regular humans with human problems. And if you're gonna do it, remember, they're the reason your video exists. It's even stranger to me though, because people seem like they want to make a video purely on their music, but are afraid that the artist isn't going to mess with them for it. But if you want to talk about their music, then talk about their music. Go ahead, don't be afraid, but don't include their backstory as a device to make your video more engaging when you don't know the slightest bit about their personal life. Same thing applies with drugs. Both these problems can be boiled down into one response and solution.
Stop using their status as an excuse to dictate how they feel.
Sorry, that has been bothering me for a while now. I realize I'm losing my objectivity here, and Tabby could probably speak on this way more intellectually than I ever could, but I still think it needs to be said.
It just needs to stop.
Because it's a toxic combo of laziness and self-absorption. This and the argument that darker times produce better art. A subsequent problem with me is the way people present it, such as the visuals, which I briefly mentioned earlier. Though it isn't the biggest issue because it can be used to make your video look cooler, it feels weirder and even more dishonest to have super dramatic visuals discussing a rapper like JPEG's backstory. Just be selfless. And not to put this video on a pedestal, but be like Tabby and Mac. That's what makes this video resonate so strongly with me. Once again, it's a completely honest experience, but Tabby is also very humble and self-aware. He knows that he still has a lot to learn, but he's respectful to the artist. He doesn't make them feel like a prop or a character to make their video better or more engaging. He brings up the glass box point used earlier, not as a way to describe him enjoying the act of a man's life, but rather what he was providing his audience. And that's a very good way of getting at it. Tabby treats him as a regular human with human problems, which I'm trying my best to convey in this video. And I think it conveys in the simple editing as well. It works as a perfect fit for the honesty and rawness of Tabby himself and Swimming. I think any dramatic visuals could be read off as dishonest, especially with the subject matter addressed. But I think it's important for these points to be said, as so many music analysis do this type of thing, and it can make the distinction between this video and other video essays much clearer. And as you can tell by now, selfishness and selflessness each have their positive and negative consequences. By now, we've talked so much, but it's time to wind down. At this point, we don't have much runtime left. We round everything off with So It Goes. It's honestly crazy how many plot points Tabby ties up with this track alone. I'm not going to give a brief overview of this track because I think this track deserves more than that. He describes it as the perfect conclusion, and he is 100% right about that.
I give 150%.
This track displays the complete transformation and realization of self-love and the point where Mac knows it is time for him to move to the next life. 2009 was a massive help towards that by Mac realizing his roots. The track is haunting and massively self-aware, as if Mac knew full well that he had done everything he had set out to do on this planet, for him and for others. Fitting, since this album and many others from Mac have a huge sense of knowing his own morality. He has finally hit full self-realization and knows that it's time for him to move to the next life. You can see that with a healthy dose of forced wall breaking and dismissing the naivety of being watched for sport. I think this can be said for Tabby as well. He refuses to act like a character in this video. A clear paradigm of this is when he's explaining the last couple bars of this track. The juxtaposition between a naive Tabby just going about listening to the album compared to voiceover Tabby who sounds like he's in a clear understanding of everything is striking, but also really telling, because he wants you to feel everything he's saying from his true self. This explains why he cuts off the typical Tabby reaction to the circles line. He even covers his face in the clip with the lyrics, so you'll focus on the lyrics and his voice. And this also ties in with Swimming. So it goes, is Mac breaking out of his box, making fun of the fact that he gets watched all the time. I'd say this happened with Tabby as well. The video he posted before this was a sarcastic vinyl unboxing. This served as a perfect teaser for this video. In that video, Tabby is self-aware and making fun of the fact that people treat him as an act, especially since his channel is filled with loud reactions and vinyl unboxings. In this video, he wanted you to feel his true self. Same goes with Mac. That glass box point comes full circle as Mac knows the commentary people say about him. The point about darker times for better art comes full circle as Mac is self-aware of this selfish want people have. And all the points come together by Mac fully addressing his life from past to present and addressing all fans and haters alike. And the last bar of the entire album states, "My God, it go on, just like a circle, I go back where I'm from." And where does this reference in the action and direction of all these different points come up from? Finally, once everything is said and done, here comes this equally beautiful cinematic synth outro that 2009 had as an intro. And well, I'll just let him explain it.
And after receiving the news of the late Mac Miller, this conclusion became the most tear-inducing moment of swimming. This closing arrangement now carries with it the sonic journey of Malcolm McCormick's spirit moving forward to the next life. Swimming.
So, in conclusion, what makes the importance of swimming, well, important? It's important in many ways. It's important for people who want to make their way out of the dark but simply can't due to their state of mind. For people wanting to create something. It will help you discover stuff about yourself you've never discovered before. Whether it's creatively or confidence-wise, I promise you it will open your mind. It screams inspiration and peace of mind by keeping a simple, relaxed, and relatable backdrop, and the simple editing. It just screams the words, "You can do this too." After all, Tabby made this with the hope that you can take something positive away from it. And speaking of Tabby, it's important for Tabby's mental health. And in that sense, if you're anything like me, it's important for yours too. I know it certainly is for mine. This album and this video are so important to me, and Tabby and Mac as artists are really important to me. They're the two main reasons I could even make a video at all. Really help lift the weight of self-doubt off my shoulders, and turn that self-doubt into self-care. I'm so glad these exist because they were just made to help anyone out, and they were made to help their own lives. Plus, it really is just great seeing all the love Mac Miller gets even after his death. And that love pushed someone to make a 24-minute YouTube video essay about a project that's about self-love, which pushed that person to self-love as well, or at least push him in the right direction. I like to call it the Mac Miller effect.
This was a really tough loss.
He's right. And I know I'm describing a person over Mac's music like I've been a fan of him for a long time, but I'm not a day one of Mac by any means. I only started listening to him a couple weeks ago at the time this is being recorded. I've listened to his entire discography at this point, and his combination of playful creativity and his slow but steady evolution and finalization and peace of mind has quickly made him one of my favorite artists. But I can say swimming has certainly helped me the most. Combine that with a truly creative individual with real human issues and a desire to put the best of himself into every video he ever makes, even if it doesn't get mad views, and these two just become and became the main inspiration to make this video. It really is beautiful. I highly encourage you to check out Tabby and Mac Miller if you haven't already. So thank you, Adam, and thank you, Mac. And I want to leave this video on this note. Tabby states he got a tattoo of Mac to remind him to keep him in his heart at all times, to keep him swimming every day. And that makes total sense, because just like a Tabby, he always has the letter M everywhere around his body. And honestly, I do too. Thanks for watching.